ReZero coming to Disgaea RPG? Well, that's something to celebrate. Hello everyone. Today we'll talk about team comps you can make with Emilia, but before we start, I have to mention that I don't plan to make team comp videos for every single unit, only the ones with noteworthy kits. What's remarkable about Emilia is that she's designed to be a supporter and she does her job very well. Her main trait is an SP transfer skill, which also gives a 15% buff to int. Perhaps you think it's not as useful as Priestess Sicily, because int teams have a lot of batteries, but for attackers with a single target ability, which further increases damage by consuming extra SP, she's a must. With a 14% increase to int and resistance on her any 0, she doesn't look that impressive, but her any 1 makes up for it with a 40% more attack and int for the ally with the highest speed. With this in mind, there are two ways to build your teams. You could either make them absurdly fast so that they take double turns before the enemy, or you could make your DPS slightly faster than everyone. As the first unit, your main DPS should have either a buff or debuff to make use of it on the first turn. That way you will easily reach max damage. Talking about damage, Emilia works best on int teams where the main DPS deals elemental damage. Her any 5 provides a 15% more damage to elemental attacks. Her any 0, any 1, and the buff from the SP transfer give a total of 69% increase to int. 55 of that counts as a buff, so that's basically the same as Mega Magic Boost, with the added benefit of getting SP. The cherry on top are her any 7, which prevents her from getting debuffs or ailments, and Angelical Lap Pillow, which costs the debuff of an ally, heals them, and cleans any ailments. This means that she'll always be able to cure your units from forget, sleep, or paralysis, because she's immune to them. Now we know how Emilia works, and what should be the strategy when using her, so let's analyze the possible team comps that you may want. As usual, your team comp should be a healer, 3 supporters, and 1 attacker, or 1 healer, 2 supporters, 1 attacker, and 1 sub-attacker. Though their stats may not be as high as your attackers, there's also the option to use a supporter as a sub-attacker. Int teams have that option thanks to the wide variety of characters they have. Now then, let's start with the buffers. To get the buff cap of 300%, you're going to need at least 2 buffers. Thankfully, Emilia counts as 1, so you want another unit who can cast Mega Magic Boost. If you have only 2 buffers, it will take 3 turns to reach the buff cap. If you have 3, it will take 2 turns. The best unit you can use as a Mega Magic Boost user next to Emilia is probably Halloween Majorita. Her any 0 gives 18% more int to the 1 wielders. Her any 1 gives 7 SP per turn to 1 wielders and monster magic weapon wielders. That makes her a self-sufficient Mega Magic Boost user. And there's also her any 7, which increases her int and speed by 30% for 1 turn when she gets hit. This can be conflicting for Emilia's any 1, unless you use her as a sub-attacker, which is a valid option. Pure Sicily is another good option. She can work as a healer and a buffer, packing a wide variety of healing spells, an ailment cleanse, and Mega Magic Boost. She can support your team in many ways, and she also has great abilities for int teams as well as an SP battery. Santa Rosaline is another unit which fulfills multiple roles. She can either buff or debuff. Her Gift Song gives a 60% int and crit damage. As you would expect, she also has an SP battery ability which provides 7 SP to the party with her any 1. If you're using Santa Rosaline next to Emilia, you may not want to use other main stat buffers, since she also gives 30% more int and res to the unit which goes after her. She has to be the last unit to take action, and your main DPS has to be the fastest one, so that your main attacker receives the buffs from both Emilia and Santa Rosaline. There's also Summer Desco. Unfortunately, she works better on a magical monster team, but she has 2 notable traits which work well on certain int teams. First is a party-wide int buff. If you plan to use a sub-attacker, she's great for those kind of teams, as you don't need to spend extra turns buffing that other unit. She also packs Mega Resist Break, so she works as a buffer and debuffer. For F2P units, there's Noelle and Creator Asagi. Both have Mega Magic Boost. Noelle has consistency issues due to the lack of an SP battery, but she gives 14% more stats except for speed with her any 1, reduces SP cost with her any 5, and heals the party with her any 0. Asagi has an SP gen, which makes her a reliable Mega Magic Boost user, and a 12% increase to all stats on her any 0, but her other abilities are not that impressive. Now let's focus on debuffers. Merlin has an int and res increase on her any 0, minus 30% resistance for the enemy with the higher resistance for 2 turns on her any 1, but most important, she has Absolute Cancel. This skill eliminates all buff and debuffs on the party. This is a very niche skill, but it really helps when you need it. Unfortunately, that also means that you'll lose the buffs from Emilia, and you may not use a buff with your attacker because they will lose it with Absolute Cancel. And let's not forget that Merlin just got a buff, which made her a really good option to be your main attacker or sub-attacker. Dark Artina is another unit you can use which packs Mega Resist Break, and if you put her last, she will also give 40% more int to your main attacker. She isn't as good as other units, which have multiple skills you can use when you reach the debuff cap, and her any 7 fall-offs quickly, but feel free to use her if you have her. Another good unit with Mega Resist Break is Margarita. Apart from that, she has a nice 15% int increase on her any 0 and a 10 SP battery on her any 5. She may seem pretty basic at first, but she has one of the highest SP batteries for int teams, so putting her on your team isn't a bad idea, especially if you want to transfer the SP with Emilia's skill. On the F2P side, we have Sakuya. Her any 1 gives a 30% int and resist buff to the ally who goes after her. She has a cheap party-wide buff which gives 30% int and defense. And of course, Mega Resist Break. She has more utility on her any 0 if you're using a monster team, so if your main DPS is a magical monster which doesn't restrict you for monster teams, you can pair her with Emilia. If you don't have Pierce easily, then you'll probably want to add some other units to your team. First there's Elizabeth. Just like her counterpart, she provides SP with her any 1, but she gives it to the ally with the highest action gauge. She also passively heals the ally with the lowest HP with her any 5, and is immune to ailments thanks to her any 7, so she can fulfill her role as a healer uninterrupted. Last, but not least, is her any 0, which provides a 15% buff to int and defense. The healing on her kit doesn't come from spells, but from skills. One of them cuts the debuff of a unit, and the other one cleanses any ailments from the party. These are light heals, so it won't be as effective as Giga Heal or Omega Heal, but the utility makes up for it. She also has a 40% attack and int debuff, so she can work as a debuffer as well. For F2P players there's a lot of options. Love Oracle, Sister Artina, Pure Flown, Fallen Angel Flown. Of course the best option is Love Oracle, thanks to her SP gen, good healing skills and spells, and her int and defense buff. Even so, all of them are good options, so feel free to use whichever you have. Talking about attackers, there's 3 notable units. Of course we have Xeno Sicily, which pairs well with Emilia thanks to her Mega Resist Break. She can be the fastest unit in your team and start by debuffing the enemy. Dark Santa Eusalia is one of the best units you can pair with Emilia, and that's because she has a plus 500 action gauge skill which gives her 60% more int and defense. If your main DPS goes first, they would have to wait a whole turn to be able to attack, but this skill solves that problem, and her single target S rank attack is really good, making the damage calculation with the lowest defensive stat. And of course she has Mega Magic Boost, and she can even use her on herself if you don't want to go so fast. The last DPS unit you should pair with Emilia is Leona's Princess Edna. She works well as an attacker thanks to her stats, and her any 7 makes her an absolute monster against female enemies. But taking into consideration her any 1, you probably will want to use her as a sub-attacker. After all, it pairs well with Emilia's any 1, as it gives the buff to the same target. With Mega Magic Boost, she can work as a supporter, but you'll probably use New Poster Girl because it buffs the whole party instead of one unit. That way you'll start building up her damage when the main attacker hits the buff cap. But what about the units that we still don't have? Well, talking about supporters, keep an eye for Madoka, Archangel Flown, Pram, Formal Artina, Super Desco, Santa Serafina, and Wise, aka Sage. For healers we have Tavern Idol Flown, Alouette, and Santa Lizarota. And for attackers, there's Magical Girl Laharl, Mao Rosaline, Love X, Lamington, and Wicked Mao. And let's not forget about the units from the Witch and the 100 Knight collab. All of them have a wide variety of effects, which make them good buffers and debuffers. Metalia can even work as a sub-attacker because she buffs an ally with her single target B rank skill. Last is my personal recommendation for team comps. For the time of release we have Merlin, Pure Sicily, Santa Rosaline, and Halloween Margarita. You get 21 extra SP each turn, 78 more int, 13% more damage with skills, and 15% more damage with elemental attacks. Remember to make your main DPS the fastest unit to get Emilia's buff, and make Santa Rosaline the slowest unit so that your attacker gets an additional buff. In the future, you can use a team with either Magical Girl Laharl or Love X. Love X doesn't get the benefits from Emilia's any 0, but it's well worth it considering that her human counterpart doesn't have an 80% crit damage up. The advantage of using Magical Girl Laharl is that she improves your consistency with an SP battery. Love X on the other hand can deal a huge amount of damage. For supporters, Tavern Idol Flown, Super Desco, and Formal Artina are good options. With the abilities of these supporters, you get 99% more int, 26% more critical damage, 53% more elemental damage, and 18% more skill damage. And that's only the abilities. All of these units have great buffs and debuffs, so you can do insane amount of damage with them. If you know other good team comps, feel free to leave them on the comments below, so that everyone can check them. Well, that was long. If you liked the video, share, like, subscribe. I'll start analyzing alchemy to provide a video with good tips. See you then!